Hello, Abigail here with the astrology of this week. This week is not quite as energetically intense as last week. We can pour one out for whatever that was. But this week we do have some intense aspects. There's a lot of confronting moments. I do think we have a very supportive full moon at the end, so look forward to that. It is loosely square the nodes, but will have already had the words the sun square the nodes. Sorry, my brain, ever since Neptune has been conjunct my Venus, my brain is like absolute mush. And I'm looking at my notes and realize I made multiple mistakes, but that's okay. It's fine. um I think, yeah, now I know what that is. I do not know why I put that there. And I saw this mistake last week if you watched that video, and then now I've realized there's a multitude of levels to this mistake, and I do want to check and see. Okay, so now I know exactly what that is now. Okay, never mind. Sorry, guys. I had to redo this video because of this mistake, so I'm not restarting another one. I refuse. I'm too stubborn. Anyways, we have a lot of tense things happening this week, mostly because they do involve planets like Mars, Pluto, and Saturn. Like I said, there is a beautiful, supportive full moon in Sagittarius at the end, which I'm actually really loving. So look forward to that on Sunday. But we do have to get through the first part of the week. And starting off on Monday, we do have the sun square the nodes. And this is going to feel very eclipse like. Also, this is like our second to last, our penultimate, if you will, square with the nodes in Virgo and Pisces. And so this is kind of a little bit of a goodbye to the cycle while still keeping in mind that we have two more eclipses because that's just how it pans out this time around. So with the sun square the nodes, pardon my dog choking in the background. We haven't covered this before. He has a medical condition. And he always goes and drinks when I record videos and then starts choking over here. God bless my Pisces sun, Pisces rising, Aries moon, Aquarius Venus, my angel baby. Um, I adore him. With Sun Square the Nodes, we are facing this cycle. We are having to come to terms with stuff. If you have moved through and actually listened to the lessons of the eclipses, this is kind of a closing of a door, and an ending to something, an ending to a grieving, an ending to a loss. Obviously, grief never really ends, but there's more closure happening in this moment, which I think is going to be helpful. However, if you are still holding on to stuff that the eclipses have already asked you to let go of, this will be hard, and they are going to be pushing you to release whatever you haven't released. This is going to be very specific to the axis that the nodes are on, and also where Gemini is in your chart. So keep an eye out and see what that is. On that same day, which is going to kind of add to what's a pretty intense day already, is the Mars Pluto square, in fixed signs. So very rough. I think in the world, we are going to see power plays. We are going to see violence. We are going to see people fighting back collectively against powers that are more elite. But it is going to be rough. People are going to be dysregulated. In our personal charts with Mars square Pluto, I do think we are going to be facing places in which we are resistant to change and places where we need to work more to uncover themes and topics that we have been hiding from or that have been suppressed in our psyche and subconscious in order, Mars and Taurus, to survive. So it's not like, oh no, you've done something wrong, but it's like, oh, we do have to uncover these things. We do have to face them, and we're going to have resistance to that. Um, this is going to lead people who are not introspective to be very triggered on this day. So if you are encountering people who are just haywire, it is best to walk away if you can, because people are not going to be rational. They are not going to be realistic. They are going to be fighting against ancestral demons, and curses and like things that really affect their family line. Also, with the nodal square, we are looking at past life topics as another layer as well. So people not wanting to let go patterns and cycles that they've held on for lifetimes. And it can be a battlefield, especially if you encounter them in a bad moment. So just know that it's a very kind of spicy day, especially if you're out and about in public. Also, be careful. Uranus is not involved, but Mars square Pluto can point to accidents or dangerous situations caused by other people intentionally. It's less of kind of like the chaos of the Uranus moment. Um, but Uranus is still trine Pluto. And so there is an element. So be careful on this day. Look both ways when you cross the street. This is not to fearmonger, but just to be like, be aware. Don't do the slightly hazardous thing to make things go faster on this day. It will not end well. The next day, which is going to add to this, love this for us, we have the Sun trine Pluto, and this is adding to the load of facing darkness, of facing systemic problems, of facing violence and fear and struggles and generational trauma, and how it has affected us and our ego and how we show up in the world. And in Gemini, I do like it, especially on this trine with Aquarius and Gemini interacting, because there are solutions. There are ways to, and not solutions in like problem solving, but as in like, oh, there's a different way to approach this that might be more unique to me, that might be more beneficial to who and how I present in the world. I would say don't force yourself to like find a solution right away. It will naturally unfold. Excuse me. So don't push yourself too hard. Be gentle. It's more about trines are more about receiving, and seeing what comes of something and kind of getting in the middle of the current and letting the universe push you forward than like forcing something. With squares, we do have to get to work. We do have to face our fears. We do have to, come to terms with things. Trines are more about welcoming in the energy and going with it. And with the Sun trine Pluto, it's about sitting with darkness, sitting with our deepest fears, but also there is hope. I don't think it is free from hope. I don't think it is free from the magic of hope. But it is going to, I think, specifically the beginning of the week, it is going to feel hard to feel hopeful because we are going to have a really clear view of how bad things are in our personal lives, in the world. However, I am Delulu. And so I always hope, even if I'm crying and really upset about it. And so I encourage you to hope with snot running down your face and tears coming out of your eyes. Things are going to feel better by the weekend. You're going to find hope. I truly believe in the Sagittarius full moon, especially with it being ruled by a Jupiter in Cancer being approached by Venus. Doesn't mean it's not hard, doesn't mean things are not bleak, and that we're facing some real difficulties. Especially with the Mars square Pluto, we're faced with what happens if something doesn't change. What happens if things don't shift? What happens if our manifestations don't come true? And so there will be a battle between the self and our belief in the impossible and our ability to hope for better things, which is kind of the human experience, is kind of being given a very garbage hand and still believing something new is possible and creating that thing. I also think with the fact that we will have just had a Sun Neptune sextile, um, and Neptune is sextile Uranus, I do think we're going to continue to see how bad global warming and the climate disaster is. We're going to start to see some really bad stuff. Also, we're almost into the summer here. We're getting, we're a couple weeks away from the summer, and the heat is going to be a problem, especially with Neptune and Aries, and how things like AI and data centers are literally raising the temperature of areas by several degrees. Um, so just be aware, there is a lot of struggle this week. There is a lot of facing how bad things are. And I think one bright side is that Pluto is in Aquarius. And so there is power in collective action. We just have to take that action, and we have to find a way forward, and we have to find a way to come together and not center ourselves and our experience in that moment. And I'm specifically talking about people with my skin color. If you are not my skin color, this does not apply to you as much. And if you're Indigenous, it doesn't really apply to you at all, unless you are actively supporting the violent work of my ancestors, which I highly doubt you're watching my videos if that is the case. Not necessarily because of me, but I don't find people who side with oppressors tend to, in general, like my work. But that message more applies to my fellow Palmies than anything else. If you are a person of color, ignore. Um, then on Thursday, we have another difficult moment, Venus square Saturn. And it is us coming up against what we had hoped would happen when it comes to relationship, where we deserve care, where we have deserved to be loved and nurtured, and the way things have happened and the way people have been selfish. And I'm not saying that Aries is an innately selfish sign. I have Aries placements. They're very generous. But with Saturn and Aries, with the restriction and the lack that can happen, there can be a sense of like resource guarding, or passion guarding, or desire guarding. And when it comes into a square with a very generous Venus, it is being like, oh, like maybe we could have worked it out, but that person is too afraid to take action, is too afraid to change, is too afraid to compromise. And so we have to face the ways in which we and other people have done that. I think also this week you're going to see people in action living this out. People live out astrology all the time, living this out, not showing up for others. You're going to really see where your more solid relationships are. I will say if someone is struggling and having a hard time and they're not really able to support you, that's not what I'm really talking about. I'm talking about people who do have the resources to support, just not showing up and participating. So I do think people are going to lose people if you haven't set boundaries already. But I will say the work of the square and the kind of friction of the square, and where we can kind of, roll up the old sleeves and put in some elbow grease, is in, counteracting this, in offering care, is in creating community and not making everything so individualized. It's also because Venus, I find that Venus in Cancer can really sacrifice themselves to an extreme sometimes. Not like with acts of service in the way that fallen Venus and like Virgo would be, for instance, but in a sense of like not really listening to your own comfort and then sacrificing it and then kind of realizing later that, oh, I actually can't compromise this much, and I can't give up this much of my like safety and security. And so I would encourage, this is an encouragement for natal Venus and Cancer placements, but also just in general, to really look at your limitations, what you can and cannot give in a relationship, what you are willing to compromise on, what you are willing to kind of hedge on, and what are hard, like hard, deal breakers. Um, like if you want kids and you're especially out of your 20s, you shouldn't be with someone, even with someone who's like a maybe, if that's really something you want. And that's the same for not wanting kids. If you don't want kids and someone's on the fence and you're in your 30s, this is not the time to be being like, maybe they'll change their mind. No, you need to be with someone who's on board, especially if you are looking very Saturnian to build something long term. Pick a different topic. Like if you want to eventually live abroad and the person you're with never wants to leave wherever you're from, this is not the time to sacrifice that. This is the time to let that thing go and look for something more compatible, because down the road, these things are going to be make or break, especially when we hit another Saturn square and and we hit another Saturn square, well, opposition technically, when we hit a Saturn opposition in 7 years. And then we'll hit another Saturn square in 14 years if we're talking about Saturn moving around from Aries. So Venus and Saturn is like, what are your hard boundaries? What are you not comfortable sacrificing? A lesson I've learned recently as a neurodivergent person is if you are also neurodivergent, something you cannot do is sacrifice your values or your life goals, because there are too many sensory issues and needs to also not be on the same page for the future. It's just, and if you're not neurodivergent, it may not be as extreme. You may be able to actually do this. But this is not the moment to sacrifice your needs. And if you are, it will be highlighted, and you will have to face the unpleasantness of that feeling. And you're also going to be shown where people are not showing up for you, which can be hard. But I think with the other astrology, it is kind of falling at a good place in time to where you don't have much wiggle room when it comes to compromise. And so you're not going to be able to, and it will force you. I mean, you can still try, but it will push you to release dynamics where your values are not equal, where you are not being met equally, or vice versa. So difficult, yes. Impossible, no. Lots of lessons. Wee wee. Then we move to Sunday, Sagittarius full moon, and I'm really happy for this one. It's a Jupiter with Venus approaching it in Cancer, where it's exalted. It is loosely square the node, so there might be a little bit of an eclipse pressure in here, but I think that pressure is mostly if you have been fighting the eclipses tooth and nail. Um, but it's not as tight. Um, it's not tight enough for me to be like, oh no. But there might be echoes, but I think this will be a moment of maybe recognition of what the eclipses released you from, like things that you thought you needed, thought you wanted, thought were good for you, and the eclipse energy is kind of like, so you realize how much more free and possible progression is now. And part of this is because it is sextile Saturn. I will do a longer video on this a few days before this full moon, but it is a moment, I feel, of expansion and kind of, even if things are rough, being able to see how they could be worse, the ways in which we freed ourselves, and the ways in which we are progressing and we are doing beautiful things with the backdrop of this difficult astrology, kind of highlighting both the places where we are still struggling and the places where we have found freedom and we have found release, and we're not trapped and tied in cycles that we might actively be watching other people be in. I find that people tend to move in like cohorts. You might not even know these people, but like there tend to be like groups of people who experience similar lessons, and depending on how fast you learn them and let them go and things like that, determines whether you stay with that cohort. But you will have a mirror held up to you of what could have been, maybe in a not so positive way, but also I think we're going to see in a positive way where we're like, oh, I could still be in because we have a Venus square, in an unfulfilling romantic relationship, or in a dynamic with a parent that is unhealthy, but I have worked really hard to release myself from that dynamic. And while there is sadness and there is a sense of loss because we have Pluto involved, there is also a celebration of what you have overcome and how you have stood up for and advocated for yourself, Mars square Pluto, and have broken family and generational curses by doing so. So this week is kind of a roller coaster. There's like celebration because we have overcome, and then there's also like, we had to fight so hard for this. We are beaten and battered by the energy, and could we get a break? Speaking of a break, I do think that the next couple of weeks moving towards um, the Venus Jupiter conjunction, I do think we do get a bit of a break. Is everything perfect and great? Probably not. I mean, look at the world. But are there victories? Do lessons feel easier? Is there more kind of flow when it comes to relationships, and like recognizing our needs, and seeing also and being able to celebrate where those needs are met? Yes. And so I encourage you, especially in the kind of the next 2 weeks, to enjoy that. There are some tricky aspects, but we've actually kind of overcome in the last few weeks several of them. And so I'm very happy about that. Let me just take another peek. Yeah, it's about the next 2 weeks. Um, I sense things are going to start to shift around the time we get the Venus Pluto opposition. It's not going to be a shift all at once, but it's definitely going to start to turn the energy. And it's kind of a mixed bag. And then we hit the eclipses. And if it's any consolation, the eclipses are going to move things forward quickly, especially in a fixed sign. And that's kind of the trick of fixed sign eclipses, is that, do we hate to see it because it's a fixed sign and we don't want to move? Yes. But it does mean energy that is usually stuck gets expedited. And remember, this is a split season. So the first portion of um, Leo season will feel eclipsy, but we won't have an eclipse. And then we will hit that eclipse, and then we will hit the Virgo Pisces axis again, this time without the nodes in that sign. So it'll be interesting. I just wanted to give you a little preview because this video wasn't as long as some of my other ones. So hang in there. The next 2 weeks after this week are a bit more free, are a bit more flowing, which I'm excited for. So look forward to that. But know that this week is chaotic. This week people are going to be volatile. They're going to be pissy on the internet. They're going to be pissy in real life. And it's up to you to protect your peace and to engage in situations where it is helpful to engage, and where there is a sense of resolution, even if that resolution is, and now we can't have a close relationship because X, Y, and Z. Anyways, my dears, that is my reading for this week. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Makes my day. Also, I do post other videos. Tuesdays are wax readings, Thursdays are pick a pile readings, and then I do the new and full moon. If you have any topic you'd like me to cover in astrology, or anything you'd like me, any like question you would like me to answer in one of my divination readings, you can always pop them in any comment section and let me know what you would like to see here. Anyways, my loves, many blessings. I wish you a week that is gentler on us than I think it's going to be. But well, let's not leave on that note. I wish you support in a week where a lot of things are going to be shifting under our feet and we're going to have to face a lot of things. But I wish you love and care and acceptance by the people that you do vibe with, the people that are there for you. Anyways, many blessings.